Not many look at the corners markets for systems, so the fact you are doing this shows you are already well ahead of the curve. Anyway, what you'll see here is a structured way to approach those matches where corners don't just creep over the line, they fly past it. We'll go through this step by step, including how to find the right matches, how to structure your bets, and what to look for in real match situations. Now, before we get into the actual steps, we need to understand the logic behind this strategy. The edge here is based on how corner counts behave in certain matches. In the right game profiles, corners don't increase steadily. They actually come in clusters. You'll often see long spells of pressure, repeated attacks, blocked shots, and teams forcing the ball wide. And when that happens, the corner count can accelerate very quickly. So instead of just backing something like over 10.5 corners and being paid once, the idea is to recognize when a match has the potential to go beyond that level and structure your bets in a way that allows you to benefit from that extra movement. Once you understand that core logic, the execution becomes a matter of discipline. Now, to take this a step further, we need to understand how the corners market actually behaves over the course of a match. If you look at the raw numbers, most football matches tend to land somewhere around 9 to 11 corners on average. That's your typical baseline, and it's exactly what the bookmakers are building their prices around. But here's the important part. Corners don't distribute evenly. You don't get a nice steady build from 0 up to 10 across 90 minutes. What actually happens is far more uneven. Some matches will stall out at 6 or 7 corners with very little attacking pressure, and then other matches, they suddenly explode and finish on 14, 15, even 16 or more. So instead of a smooth curve, you've got a wide distribution of outcomes, and that's where the opportunity starts to appear. Because once a match starts leaning towards the higher end of that range, it rarely just stops right on the average, it tends to keep building. Now, when it comes to pricing these markets, bookmakers are mainly working from expectation models. They're looking at team averages, historical data, playing styles, and they'll adjust those numbers based on the strength of the teams involved. So if you've got two sides that both average a high number of corners, you'll see that reflected in the line. If it's a slower matchup, the line comes down accordingly. But here's the limitation. Those models are built on pre-match expectation. They're very good at estimating what should happen over the full 90 minutes. What they're not as good at pricing is how a match actually unfolds in real time, because once the game kicks off, everything becomes far more dynamic. Game state starts to matter, momentum starts to matter. You might get one team pinned back, defending wave after wave of attacks. You might see repeated crosses into the box, blocked shots, and the ball constantly being forced wide. And in those moments, corners don't behave like a steady average anymore. They come in clusters. You'll often see 3, 4, even 5 corners arrive in a short spell, simply because one team cannot relieve the pressure. And this is exactly where the edge comes from. The market is still anchored to that original expectation, but the reality of the match has shifted, and when you can recognize those situations, you're no longer just relying on the average. You're positioning yourself for when the corner count starts to accelerate beyond it. Once you understand that, the rest of the strategy starts to make a lot more sense. Okay, so let's start with phase 1. Phase 1 is all about identifying the right matches. This is absolutely critical because the corners ladder strategy only works when you're targeting games with genuine corner potential. Now, there are 2 ways you can approach this. The first option is to calculate your expected corner total yourself. That might involve looking at team averages, playing styles, crossing frequency, shots, and how both teams typically behave in matches. And if you want to go deeper into that, I've covered that in another video where we break down exactly how to project corner totals properly. I will leave a link to that in the description of the video also. The second option, and the much quicker route, is to use the Statto app. You can simply use the corners prompts to generate a short list of matches where the data already suggests strong corner potential. So instead of manually analyzing fixtures for hours, you're letting the artificial intelligence highlight the best opportunities for you before the matches even start. From there, your job is simply to narrow it down to games that look like they could produce sustained pressure. Because remember that we're not just looking for a match to go over the line, we're looking for matches where corners could build and accelerate. When I first started out, I used to ignore this completely. I'd just look at odds, pick a line that looked decent, and place the bet without any real thought behind the match itself. And more often than not, I was just guessing. I would think, surely this one will have lots of corners, and that was it. It wasn't until I started focusing on the actual match profile that things began to change. So either way, you need to approach this with a good idea of the corners projection for the match. No guessing. That brings us nicely into phase 2. Phase 2 is where you identify your main value line. This is your foundation bet. Typically, this will be something like over 10.5 corners, usually priced somewhere around even money. This is the bet you believe has value based on your analysis. So if nothing else happens, if the match just about clears the line, this is the bet that gets the job done. Now this is where most bettors would stop. They'd place that single bet and move on. But the whole idea of this strategy is to go one step further when the situation calls for it. Because in the right matches, clearing that line isn't the end point, it's just the beginning. The thought behind this is that when you win your bet and get it right, you often see that corners total go much higher than your prediction, and it rarely only lands just by a single corner. And with this system, you are getting paid for that by using the ladder. And let me show you how you can quickly find your main value line without doing complicated maths. I am here in the Statto app and I can select the corners prompt, then the AI can scan all the matches from around the world and generate a short list of strong corners predictions for the day. I can then only look for the matches which fit the overs profile and add this to my shortlist. For example, just the second match in is suggested to be over 9.5 corners, and so with the ladder strategy I will look to back this and over 10.5 corners along with the over 11.5 line too. This software is absolutely mind-blowing, and if you want to try it for yourself, then click the links in the video description, or I will leave a QR code on the screen for you to scan. It will literally change your betting life. That leads us into phase 3. Phase 3 is where we introduce the ladder. Now instead of increasing your stake on the same line, you place a separate unit across the next two higher lines. Just to be clear, these should be seen as two different bets. So for example, if your main bet is over 10.5, you might split your second unit across over 11.5 and over 12.5. What this does is give you a booster effect. If the match only just gets over the line, your main bet covers you. But if the corner count keeps building, those additional bets start to come into play and increase your overall return. Out of curiosity actually, how often have you had a corners bet land comfortably and thought to yourself that you probably could have gone even higher and got a better price? Because that's exactly what we're trying to capture here. And just to be clear, this isn't about forcing extra bets for the sake of it. It's about recognizing when a match has the potential to run beyond expectations. By the way, if you like videos like this and want to see more on this subject, remember to absolutely smash the like button. It tells YouTube to send you more of our systems as soon as they come out. And while you are there, you should hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss a system or strategy video. We also have a Telegram channel where we share daily predictions from the Statto app. Link for that is in the description of the video. That brings us into phase 4. Phase 4 is all about discipline and proper use of the strategy. This is not something you apply to every corners bet. In fact, that's probably the biggest mistake you can make. The ladder is only for matches where you genuinely believe the corner count could exceed expectations. If you're looking at a game that feels like it might just scrape over the line, then a simple single bet is usually the better option. But when everything lines up, when the match profile is right, when the in-play signals are strong, that's when the ladder becomes powerful, because you're no longer just being paid for being right, you're being paid for being very right. Now, before you start applying this, it's important to understand where most bettors get this wrong, because this is where the difference between a good idea and a profitable approach really shows. The first mistake is forcing the ladder into matches that don't deserve it. A lot of people see the potential upside and immediately try to apply this to every corners bet they place. But if the match profile only suggests it might just creep over the line, then adding those extra bets is actually working against you. You're effectively paying for upside that the game isn't likely to produce. This strategy only works when the match has genuine potential to exceed expectations. The next mistake is ignoring the actual flow of the game. It's very easy to look at the pre-match numbers, place your bets, and then just sit back and hope it plays out. But corners are heavily influenced by what's happening on the pitch. For example, you might have a match that looked perfect before kickoff, but once it starts, the tempo is slow, there's very little pressure, and the ball isn't being forced into dangerous areas. That's not a game where you want to be aggressive with higher lines. On the flip side, you might see a match where one team is constantly attacking, shots are being blocked, crosses are flying in, and the defending side can't get out. That's where the corner count can suddenly accelerate. So you always want to stay aligned with what the game is actually giving you, not just what you expected beforehand. Another mistake I see quite often is bettors chasing higher lines without any real justification. They'll see a line like over 10.5 and then immediately jump to over 12.5 or over 13.5 just because the price looks appealing. But the ladder isn't about guessing how high it could go. It's about building on a solid foundation. Your main bet should always be the one you believe has genuine value. The additional bets are there to take advantage of the situation if it develops further, not to replace the core logic of the strategy. And finally, this is where discipline really comes in. This is not a system where more bets equals more profit. In fact, it's the opposite. The real edge comes from being selective, from recognizing when everything lines up and having the patience to sit out when it doesn't. I learned this the hard way myself. I used to try and force these types of approaches into average matches, thinking I was giving myself more chances to win, but all I was really doing was increasing my exposure in games that didn't justify it. Once I tightened that up and only applied it in the right situations, the results became far more consistent. So if you take anything from this section, it's this. Don't treat the ladder as something you always do. Treat it as something you earn the right to use when the match truly calls for it. And like I said earlier guys, this is where using the Statto app can make a massive difference. Instead of spending hours trying to identify the right matches yourself, you can use the artificial intelligence to generate structured corner insights in seconds. It gives you a clear starting point, highlights the strongest opportunities, and allows you to focus on execution rather than research. If you want to check that out, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. It's a serious upgrade for anyone looking to approach football betting in a more structured and professional way. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you smash the like button. It tells YouTube to show you more of this kind of content. You should also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. As said, we release prediction videos which are very time sensitive and you do not want to miss. You should also check the link in the description for our Telegram channel, where we share more daily predictions for free. Anyway, there's another video on the screen right now that you'll definitely want to watch next. This is another great system to learn if you want to build your edge. I'll see you over there.